I wanted to ask you specifically about the role of the recruitment analyst, Tom, because it's a role that I did a little bit when I was at Brighton. I did that for a period of time, and I covered it in a recent episode where we kind of went through all different types of roles within a football club. So, and I do get messages from people that are interested in doing it. Some are unsure about what it actually is and what the purpose is. You mentioned there, like creating dossiers and presentations potentially, but there is more to it than that, I would say. But yeah, I wondered if you could break that role down in terms of what the purpose is basically, and the kind of relationships that recruitment analyst would have within a scouting department.
Yeah, so for me, the recruitment analyst role is super important because you're working very closely with the head of scouting and the sporting director, and you're extremely close to the process, and you can sort of govern and keep the process accountable to what it's supposed to do. And it goes beyond the recruitment analyst role goes beyond the provision of player dossiers, which is career information, character information, social information, as well as actual like player ability information, data metric profile, but also and video presentation, strengths and weaknesses of the player. But we also used in that recruitment analyst role, we also used to do like special tailored projects, such as, I can give you one example. When AFC Bournemouth when we were there, we were promoting to the Premier League. We looked at the transition of Championship strikers to the Premier League and their goal returns, etc., etc. So that provided the manager with a little bit of context on what we can expect from our players, and they're similar to these Premier League strikers when they went up from the Championship and things like that. So that the recruitment analyst role with the provision of information to support the signing of a player. No,
that's interesting, because that link, when I was at Brighton, we did similar things in terms of like you had the dossiers and the stuff you were doing, like for players that were coming in there and then, but you did have these longer term projects. So very similar, like we looked at squad composition of teams, because I was there when they were in the Championship, so like to make that step up to the Premier League, and then also tracking all transfers from Europe. I can remember a little project we did with that. So yeah, you have these kind of ongoing things. So that's really interesting. So in terms of them kind of say the dossiers and the presentation, just again for people that are listening, Tom, that might not know specifically what goes in there, you mentioned a couple of things, like there would be information on the player, so like basic information, but what else would actually be in there? Because that can sometimes be a very large-ish project in terms of making sure you've got all the information relevant for that particular player.
So it would contain I like to put things in there that keep our scouts accountable as well. So the recruitment analyst, when making the player dossiers, I like to see the journey of our scouting audit of that player. So perhaps one scout's put a monitor, the other scouts put shortlist, and the other scouts put hopefully not dismiss or sign or whatever. So I like to provide that information because it shows the manager the journey that the player's gone in with our own internal scouting audit. And then you can go to a deeper level and provide match context, like, so this scout provided the shortlist recommendation, but he was playing against 10 men, for example, or he was playing away from home, and the recommendation was slightly lesser than a home win, for example. So I think that's a really good piece of information to put in a player dossier, as well as their data profile, as well as their social media profile, character references, also the financial and agent information. So, for example, if we're buying a player, we need to know what are the trends of that club. Like, if we're looking at a winger, have they sold a winger for what sort of price point and stuff like that. So essentially all of that information would go in there to guide the sporting director and the head coach or manager to make the best decision possible. That is the goal of a player dossier. It's to minimize risk and leave no stone unturned. So if a key bit of information is he gets a bit homesick or something like this, which I've had working in MLS and Saudi Pro League, that has to be in there, because then we need to find mechanisms to counteract that, etc., etc.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting about including the pathway through the scouting process, like including them reports in there, because I think, especially like larger clubs now, there's a big team of scouts, and if they're all watching several players every week, there's lots of reports that, and all of that. I've spoke about this on the channel before. Like a lot of all them reports are data. Like data doesn't have to be numbers and stats, and data is all the information. So if you
qualitative data,
yeah, if you've got all these scouting reports on these players, I think a lot of clubs probably don't utilize that enough in terms of they've got all this and it's just there, but they're not actually doing what they could do with it to get the most from it. So yeah, that's interesting that you include that. So
and this is what this point lends perfectly to the overarching question that you asked me, Chris, which was, why was the Bournemouth process so detailed? Is because we had 3 or 4 people that every single report that was submitted into the scouting database was checked and challenged. Every single comment on a player, and then it was my job actually, as the first phase of that, to then allocate and bucket the player correctly.
Yeah, because it goes back to, so I had, this is a while back, Chris Robinson on the pod. He's kind of he's done scouting for many years, and we spoke about kind of that scouting potentially is the last area, or one of the last areas, to be almost professionalised. And the reason he mentioned that was a lot of scouts, even at top professional clubs, are working for expenses, or they're working, unpaid or whatever. And in some cases, it sounds quite crazy that, if the clubs are relying on the information that these scouts are providing, why wouldn't they value the scouts more and give them more training and all of that sort of stuff? So I wondered if you had any thoughts on that, Tom.
I think that I would actually contest that point a little bit, because I think that the FA have done a really, really good job with the scouting courses that they've put on. And then the PFSA have also done something similar. And now there's the training ground gurus have the training ground guru has a specific allocation for scouting and recruitment. So I think that there is a real big respect and sort of inquiry into the scouting discipline, which is good. But yeah, I understand Chris's point that the lesser level you go, it can look a little bit informal, let's say.